So getting on to games development generally, it's a changing landscape. Big surprises, PlayStation 3 hasn't done so well, PSP as well hasn't done so well. Wii out of left field is doing excellently. Xbox is the games world's favorite developer. We're seeing a move towards photorealism, so you won't be able to tell the difference between a feature film and a game. SIGGRAPH papers are now being applied in the game sector. Things like shaders and things of that sort are now commonplace within the games environment. Coupled with that is there's a move to multi-core processors where if you've got the AI in a game, you've got the physics, you've got to spread all that work around a number of processors. The good news for new companies is that this is creating new opportunities because the older companies are not geared up for this new approach. Production teams are getting bigger, not quite the case for casual games and mobile games, but they are getting larger in size, a lot more outsourcing, a lot more reporting structures being needed. And the big problem, the UK is very expensive. And UK artists are really, they're okay, but what people come to the UK for is the programmers. They may as well go elsewhere, Czechoslovakia, somewhere like that for the artists. And also tools used across games are also being used in films. And what's starting to happen is the business models for games is also changing. So this is IFG applying the bonding model to computer games. And this is very interesting with banks like bonders because that's basically they insure the risk. The essence of this is that traditionally the games industry's origins essentially is car boot sales. In effect, in the 70s, 80s, people would write a computer program, run off 100 disks, go and sell it from the back of their car. Now it's like a market trading background to that whole industry. Now the problem is, what you're looking at with something like this is it's extremely mature reporting structures. You've got banks, you've got bonders. So if you're a games developer based in any part of the UK, you suddenly have to deal with all these other organizations. And also, unlike the TV world, like some of the speakers earlier, in general, if you're a UK developer, you have to hand over the rights to the publisher. So this is the traditional publishing model, which I'll skip over because I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. And huge importance of brands is absolutely key. If you're investing in a computer games company, what you're only interested in is the point at which they're bought out. Often that is where the serious money is made. So for example, Lionhead being bought by Microsoft recently is a good example of that. And invariably, the reason why a large publisher like EA buys an independent studio is because of the games, the rights, and the product, not the people, the fact that they retain the rights. So Grand Theft Auto, they were very smart at keeping the games rights throughout. In general, in the UK, the US publishers demand all the rights, and the UK companies just become service companies. And that's not always attractive to investors. Handheld games growing. The problem with that is that the Nintendo DS it's hard getting the development system. So there's money in that area. People like to invest in companies doing DS games, but very few developers get access to the development kits. Massively multiplayer games are a really hot area, but extremely expensive. So £70 million building a massive multiplayer game, maintaining it, having all the servers. So Jagex in Cambridge, hugely successful area. Investors are definitely interested in this area, but are frightened by the costs. But this is where the serious money is, particularly in the Far East. Mobile gaming. Everyone at this conference seems to like mobile stuff. Mobile gaming is pretty dead. If you talk to, 2 years ago, this was the growth area. This is where the money was. People were leaving console development to go and make mobile games. That definitely is not viewed as a growth area. Xbox 360 with online delivery. Everyone thought, great, the developer will be able to sell direct to consumer. They let a few developers do that, but then pretty much Xbox fell in line with the publishers, and the publishers maintain that channel. But if you find a developer that has got route to market, so Team 17 in Wakefield do have a direct route to market. They're attractive. Casual games, very, very interesting area. Investors like this area. The only problem is it's copied. Everyone, people produce a game, it's reskinned and produced by someone else. So if you're a casual developer, you have to be very adept at getting your game extremely wide quickly, because someone else will copy it. Serious games, extremely interesting area. Blitz, for example, with medical training, a growth area, a long-term investment, but definitely this is an area where, particularly when consumers want to interact with software more like computer games, and computer games are a very good way of training people to do things. Middleware, this is the production where you're producing tools for other people to use. Interesting area. Whether the games industry can sustain lots of middleware companies is a big question. The smart middleware companies are producing technology that can be used by other people. But I think what one's going to increasingly see is game engines like the Unreal Engine not being just used for games, but used for social networking environments. Because games engines are extremely powerful. Normally they have really good AI, really good physics. They've got lots of stuff, hard stuff programmed in. And I think what we're going to see is games engines being used sideways. And that's an interesting area, but the main players which are listed there have probably pretty much sewn up the market. And then basically middleware you can plug together in different ways. The really interesting area that's not talked about is where you get a crossover. So for example, Flickr, which has been talked about a lot today, started off as a massively multiplayer game, and there was a module that was so they could share elements within it. Quite early on they realized that they had something really good. They dumped the multiplayer game and then switched to the company that we're so familiar with. But what's interesting is something that started off as a computer game being exploited in a different form. Another example, not well known, is Google Earth. Again, the same scenario, a company called Intrinsic, slightly complicated history, but it started off as game software that eventually took the form of Google Earth. So a few too many words on these slides. But what's interesting here is the influence of gaming technology on the way most exciting areas of technology moving forward. I think obviously social interaction, gaming is key. Particularly with kind of 3D worlds being important, and emergence of things called semi-games, products like the movies sort of attempted to create 3D worlds where people would interact with one another. But things like RuneScape by Jagex sort of start to get involved with that area. Okay, so I'm nearly finished, and then Ed and I can have some discussion and we'll take questions. So these are the people that have invested in games. The UK doesn't really get much investment compared to the US. The challenge is in straightforward games, and I mean console games. There have been quite a few examples. Viz, Alexia, Argonaut. The investors put the money in. Within 12 months, the company's closed. So the catalogue of poor investment, whether that's the origins, the kind of car boot sale origins, take the money and run, creeping in, who knows, or whether it's genuine problems with US publishers not paying milestones and things of that sort. But there is interest, and I think what the real action is where you're getting a crossover between 3D games engines and the social networking space. I think that's, when I talk to investors, that's what they're most interested in. What is there in that area that they can put money in? But the other key thing is, what we're not talking about here is kind of a few Flash programmers knocking together in HTML. One's looking at substantial C++ programming. And I think what's going to happen is people will move from the computer games industry into other sectors. Okay, so that's the talk bit. We can have some questions or discussion.